Hey, again, thank you for being salt and light. If you would like to make a pledge, hey, I'm considering giving this much above and beyond, we'd love for you to grab one of these cards. You can rip it in half and you can put it in the black boxes on your way out. That would mean so much to so many people. And what could God do? Think about it. What could God do if you and if what could God do if you were actually salt and light? Like, what could God do if you and I, followers of Jesus, if we were functioning right? If we lived in such a way and behaved in such a way and went about our lives in such a way that was salt and light. Listen to the words of Jesus, Matthew chapter 5, verse 13. We started this series last week, and we talked about how these two words, salt and light, you've seen them all over since you've gotten here today. I can look out and I see them everywhere in this room. These were two words that Jesus intentionally chose because they describe the function he wanted his followers to have on earth. So let's read together. You are the salt of the earth. You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and what does it do? It gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others. So what? So that they may see your good deeds and do what? And glorify your Father in heaven. I wonder what God could do if his followers were functioning right. I wonder what God could do if we were actually salt and light. Do you know what God would do? He would help people see him. He would help people see Jesus. That is our function. They would see him clearly and truly and purely, and then what would they do? They would choose, because of the witness they just saw, the light that they just saw, the salt that they just tasted, what would they do? They would choose to glorify God. I wonder what God would do if you and I were salt and light. Now, more than a teaching series, okay? More than just a sermon and a couple of bullet points and an application. I want this to be a movement in us. I want these words to be a movement through you, not just in you, for the local community and ultimately for the world, because Jesus says we're the salt of the earth, right? And that's a pretty big vision, not just the local areas, but everywhere. And what if people who follow Jesus, what if when people had an interaction or an encounter with a follower of Jesus, what if when someone walked away from that and what they said was, wow, that person, man, they shine the brightest. I've met a lot of people, I've had conversations with a lot of people, but the conversation I had with that Christian, man, it tasted so good, I wanted to go back again. I wanted to have another conversation. I just wanted to get close because the light that they exuded, I just needed to be in. Why? Because the world I live in is actually a dark world. And I need light. And I need light. And like, what if even when people disagreed with us, or if people got hung up on believing certain things, like what if no one ever questioned a Christian's integrity? You know what I mean? Like, what if no one ever dared question a Christian's compassion for another human being? Like, people, maybe they go, I'm not sure that happened, or I'm not sure it went like that, or I'm not sure he really rose from the dead, but I'm never questioning whether or not I want to add a Christian to the equation. Like, let's get them on this team. Let's get them here. Let's get them in this conversation, because solutions are going to happen. The conversation is going to taste so good, and light is going to be everywhere. where, like, what if you and I were really salt and light? And sometimes we get this right, and it's beautiful, and it's what we're supposed to do, and it tastes good, and it shines bright. But sometimes, and you know this, sometimes we get it wrong. And all too often, followers of Jesus, you and me, we get it wrong in a particular area. We get it wrong with our words. All too often. In conversation, we say something a little without compassion and little care for how our words are going to land or affect someone. We get it wrong. Our words are not always salt. The way you and I text someone is not always salt. The way you and I post on social media is not always salt. The way you comment on that thread, that why is anybody even commenting back and forth? This is crazy. Do people really argue about this on social? It's not really salt. It's not salt. And we get it wrong. And here's the big thing. Oftentimes, Christians have cost others a chance to see God. How? With our words. With our words. With how we said something. We can all think back to a time where we saw someone go, oh, they shouldn't have said that. Oh my goodness, did they say it just like that? Did I just hear that come out of the mouth of a follower of Jesus about another group of people? All too often we can look back and we can even look at ourselves and we can go, man, I know I said what was true, but man, it was kind of mean. Like, I was totally true, but my tone was a little different than how Jesus talked about people who weren't followers of God. Or we can think back and we can just remember where the way we said something, the way we argued for something, and we get to the end of it, and what did it do? It cost us. Or at the very least, it left a bad taste in someone's mouth. And we've all done that. And you might say, or you might have heard someone say, right? I wish I could be better with my words. You ever heard anybody say that? I wish I could just, I wish I could be more kind with my words. I wish I could be more understanding with my words. I mean, someone may have told you at some point in your life, you know what you should do? You should think before you speak. Anybody ever been told that? It's pretty good advice, right? And I think it is, but I want to sort of tweak that advice because I think it's good advice, but Jesus kind of weighs into this advice that we get all the time, and it happens in all of our relationships, but he has some specific advice around our words. And in Matthew chapter 12, verses 33 and following, here's what Jesus says. Make a tree good, and its fruit will be good. Or make a tree bad, and its fruit will be bad. For a tree is recognized by its fruit. What is Jesus saying? He's saying if it's a good tree, you can tell by how well it produces, right? That's a good tree, and you can tell. And then he turns to the religious people, and he says, you brood of vipers, how can you, who are evil, say anything good? For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. A good man brings good things out of the good stored up in him, and an evil man brings evil things out of the evil stored up in him. Now, on average, in conversation, in conversations, you and I speak at a rate of 120 to 150 words per minute. Some of you clock it a little bit higher, and some of you just a little behind. It's okay. Now, in a lifetime, 562 billion words is what could be estimated that women say. And around 200 billion words is what is estimated that men say, give or take, okay? So let's just think about that. That's a lot of words, right? For both genders. That's a lot of words. 500 billion, 600 billion words. Now, if that's how many words we say in a lifetime, imagine how many words we think. The mouth speaks what the heart is full of. So what are you full of? Inside, like what are you storing in your thoughts, in your heart? Like what are you consuming and it's just planting in you? What are you listening to and it's storing in there? What is being inputted or downloaded that is forming your thoughts and forming your values? I can ask it this way. Are you full of good words? On the thought level, are you full of bad words? On the thought level. Now, based on your words, people will answer. They will come to a conclusion about what you're full of, right? Some of us, sometimes us, we're full of Jesus, right? Because of what's coming out of our mouths. People look in or they lean in. You handle a conversation well. You have an incredible amount of grace or kindness. They see your compassion coming through your words. Through your words, they understand that Jesus is your Lord, and they see, wow, there's something different about you. That's not how everybody else handles it. And then they start to wonder themselves and go, maybe I should learn a little bit more about that. Like Jesus seems to be making them better. And so when people look at you, and more importantly, when they listen to you, they make a conclusion, wow, they're full of Jesus, or they're full of it, right? Seriously. Do your words make people question the message that you say you believe in? Are your words functioning right? Because people listen to your words, and your words are the overflow of your heart and your thoughts. Are your words salt? Are your words light? And Jesus goes on. He says in verse 36 of Matthew 12, "But I tell you that everyone will have to give an account." We should all sit up straight. Everyone will have to give an account on the day of judgment for every empty word they have spoken. For by your words you will be acquitted, and by your words you will be condemned. So our words somehow can predict how judgment's going to go. And Jesus says that our empty words, which could also be translated our idle words, our lazy words, our thoughtless or unprofitable or even injurious words, they reveal your heart. They reveal your heart. They reveal what you actually value. And if you want to speak better words, don't just think about what you say. Don't just think about the words you pick. Here's what I want to challenge you to do. Think about how you think. Think about how you think. Because your words, they come out of the overflow of your thinking. They come out of the overflow of your heart. They spill over. So whatever your thinking patterns are, whatever words you use when you think and you think nobody else can see what you're thinking, it comes out. It has come out. And the question that we all have to wrestle with, is it salt and is it light? And so maybe you need to change your words. How are you going to do that? You're going to change your words by changing your thoughts. Because it's an overflow. So if you want to speak better words, if you want to speak more compassionate words, if you want to use your words in a way that Jesus imagined you using your words, then it starts in your thought life. Then it starts with your thought words. And Jesus speaks about the connection between thoughts and words and behaviors in Mark chapter 7. He says this, what comes out of a person is what defiles them. For it is from within, out of a person's heart, that evil thoughts come. Sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, greed, malice, deceit, lewdness, envy, slander, arrogance, and folly. All these evils, in case we haven't understood what Jesus is teaching yet, come from inside and defile a person. And half of the examples, maybe more, Jesus mentions here have to do with using our words in a wrong way. Not just like an action here, like malice, or deceit, or slandering someone's name, or having arrogance. You know how that comes out in words. Like, it's just crazy that half of the things that Jesus lists are things we do with our mouth. And so Jesus really wants us to understand this, that our words, they start in our thoughts. They start in our thoughts. And so, if your words are negative, then the inclination, I would guess, is your thoughts are negative. If you are a complainer with your words, then I would just go ahead and make the guess that in your thoughts, there is even more complaining. If you are foolish with your words, I'm just going to reason that you're probably foolish in your thinking too. If you're arrogant with your mouth, could you imagine the arrogance in someone's brain, like what they're thinking about? Like if they said that, could you just imagine what they did, probably filtered out? Like if your words are condescending, I can only imagine what your thoughts are and what my thoughts are. What thoughts? What thoughts are you tolerating right now that could spill out? And as we sit under the teaching of Jesus, we need to understand that all of our behaviors and all of our attitudes, well, they start as thoughts. And we need to recognize very quickly that that is not a Jesus thought. That is not a, I have been forgiven and redeemed and, know the Lord and the creator of the universe thought. And we need to understand that. Because your thoughts, well, they cost you. They cost you long before your words ever do. It's in your heart that your words spill out. So how can we change our thoughts so that we can change our words? What do we need to do on the thought and on the heart level to better function with our mouths as salt and as light? And Paul teaches on speaking in general, and he gives us 4 ideas that will shape how you and I think and speak. They can shape it if we let them, and they can shape our speech into salt. And that's what we need to do. So in Colossians chapter 4, starting in verse 2, here's what Paul says. Continue steadfastly in prayer, being watchful in it with thanksgiving. At the same time, pray also for us, that God may open to us a door for the word. Another way you could say the word is the message. To declare the mystery of Christ, on account of which I am in prison, that I may make it clear, which is how I ought to speak. And so Paul gives us a few things here. And the first thing is, if you want to change your words, then I think you need to know the goal of your words, right? The goal is not what you think it is. It's something as simple as, well, I'm going to use these words so I can, order off the dollar menu, at McDonald's or something. That's the goal of these words right now, Like, that's not the goal of your words, okay? We think like that, but that's not the goal of your words. What's the goal of your words? All of your words. For people to see Jesus in our world through our words. That is the goal of your words. Paul says, whatever I say, let it be so clear to other people who Christ is. I'm in prison right now, but whatever comes out of my mouth, however it comes out of my mouth, whenever it comes out of my mouth, let it point everyone I'm around to Jesus. He says, how I talk is the means in which others will become aware potentially of who Jesus is. And can I suggest that how you talk may be the clearest way for someone to see Jesus? Our collective words ought to illuminate and reveal and make clear who Jesus is. Whatever you do in word or in deed, do for the glory of God. Every single word that comes out of our mouth ought to point people to Jesus. And not just the word, but how we say the words. Does it taste like salt? Is it light? Your words have such a big purpose, and we were created to bring glory to God with every part of us. Every word, every conversation, every argument. Does it point people to the truth and the grace and the freedom that is Jesus? If a collection of words is a message, what message does your words speak? So you need to know the goal. If you know that the goal of your mouth and of your speaking is to help others see Jesus, that changes how you think. The second idea to shape your thoughts is to pray about your words while they are still thoughts. This is so important. Pray about your words before they form into words that come out and cause damage. You got to pray about them. And the words that Paul uses here are pray steadfastly, right? So what does this mean? It means you need to attend to. You need to constantly. You need to persist. That's what the word steadfastly means. So when we're talking about praying and praying about how we speak and praying about our thoughts, how often do we need to pray? Well, we need to pray steadfastly. So if you have a persistent thought that is just really not a good thought, man, you might need to persistently pray. You might need to match that persistence. Like, what if we learned the moment that a thought came into our hearts that was not one of Jesus, that we just prayed? Like, what if we were watchful, like Paul says here? Like, what if we were cautious and alert and aware? What if we paid strict attention to what was going on in here and what we were allowing to go in here and in here? Like, what would happen in our thoughts if we were just so watchful and so cautious and persistently praying through our hearts? If our thoughts are what we have stored up, and all kinds of things get stored up in here. If our thoughts are what we have stored up, then prayer is organizing our thoughts or cleaning out the closet of your thoughts, however you want to think about it. If you're not happy with your thinking, then you should start praying. And don't stop. And don't stop. And don't stop. And don't stop. Because when you meet God on the prayer level over your thoughts and your heart, what will God do? God will transform your thinking into His thinking. Pray your thoughts. Pray your thoughts before they become words. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, you may have heard of him, was a German Lutheran pastor around World War II, and he was an anti-Nazi sort of activist in Germany, which eventually led to him getting captured and murdered for the way he spoke out against the Nazi regime and all the things that were happening in World War II. And here's what Dietrich wrote. Often we combat evil thoughts most effectively if we absolutely refuse to allow them to be expressed in words. Isolated thoughts of judgment against our neighbor can be curbed and smothered by never allowing them the right to be uttered, except as a confession of sin. If there was anybody who might have the right to utter some words about a group of people who took his freedom away, it was Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And yet he says, I do not want to think evil against my neighbor, unless I'm confessing the evil that I'm thinking. And so let me ask, what thought is un-Christ-like? Confess it. Confess it. Or it will spill out into the next conversation, into the next social media, thread. Confess it. What thought about someone or a group of someone's just needs to be confessed? This is not godly. Please get this thinking out of me, God. This is not the thinking that you have, Jesus. Please make my thinking your thinking. Every time I think this thought, God, would you put me on my knees so I can confess this thought, because I don't want this spilling out. Because if that happens, then people may not see Jesus. Then people may not see Jesus. Proverbs 4:23 says, be careful how you think. Your life is shaped by your thoughts. If I keep thinking this thought, it will produce, hear me, it will produce a bad result. It will produce it because you are an overflow. And so what do we need to do? We need to pray about our thoughts before they become words. We need to know the goal of our words, which is to bring glory to God and help other people see him. And then we need to, and I chose this word intentionally, we need to marinate on Jesus' words. I was tempted to write meditate, but I don't think that we would understand that as well, what I'm trying to say, okay? Because meditate sounds a little spiritual. Now, I get marinate, okay? Because that's how you get meat ready to cook, right? And so what happens if you marinate it? It's going to taste what? Better, right? What's your secret? Oh, I marinated it. You don't marinate? No. You need to start if you want your steak to taste like mine, all that kind of, like we get this word. And so what I want to challenge you to do is I want to challenge you to not just think about Jesus' words, not just, kick them around sometimes whenever you have time or whenever I have time. No, marinate on Jesus' words. Zip the gallon bag and let all the juices saturate into you. Because if you want your thinking to change so your words can change, well, then I'm just guessing we might need to really engulf ourselves in Jesus' words and listening to how he speaks and focusing on his commands and the way of Jesus and the person of Jesus. I'm just wondering if you're not doing so well with your words, maybe it's because you're not marinating on Jesus' words. I have a tough time believing that if we were truly spending time with Jesus, how it wouldn't somehow impact how we think and how we speak. Psalm 119 says, I have hidden your word in my heart that I might not sin against you. Are you just so soaking the mixture of Scripture in your life that it is flavoring you? Like when it's time to cook, are you reaching for the Jesus seasoning? Like are you trying to get his words in you? If that is not your appetite, you will struggle to change your thinking. And I don't even have to tell you what will happen to your words, because you already know. You already know. And Paul shares the final way we shape our words and thoughts. He says in Colossians 4, verse 5 through 6, walk in wisdom toward outsiders, making the best use of time. Let your speech, so your conversation, the words you choose as you're talking in every setting, let your speech always. Do you ever get frustrated that the writers of the New Testament like to write the word always in there? Like, I just feel like, that isn't always. And we just have to humble ourselves and go, our speech always needs to be gracious. So everything I say has to give people what they don't deserve. Love and compassion and honesty. Yeah. Even if I don't like them. Yep. Every word, let your speech always be gracious. And I love the phrase, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how you ought to answer each person. Each person. Not like a general phrase. He's saying, no, each unique person, each unique conversation, and each unique situation with each person's unique past and story. You need to always be speaking in such a way that it is seasoning the conversation with salt. Always be gracious. Always serve good words to everyone. That needs to be our mindset. That's what salt is. Everywhere we go, every meeting we walk into, every time we're about to sit down and talk about finances with our spouse, every time we're about to have a conversation with a neighbor, every time we're about to have an interaction with anyone, let our words always be good all the time. Always serve good words to everyone. Because we may not get an opportunity to be salt with that audience again. There may not be another conversation. There may not be a follow-up. This may be it. Will you be wise? Will you be salt? Will you make the best use of time? Ephesians 4:29 says this. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. The word unwholesome is the word sapros, which means rotten, or similar to the word we read earlier when it was talking about a bad tree and bad fruit, same word. A rotten word. A worthless word, an overripe or poor quality word. And so here's what happens. We don't just speak badly or mess up with our speech. What do? We think rottenly. And we let the thoughts sit and root in us. Of course, we don't want to speak unwholesome and rotten words, but we're letting it happen. Why are we letting it happen? Because we're not addressing the thoughts. We're not thinking about how we think. We're only hoping we don't say that wrong again. And that's not going to work. It never has, and it never will. He says instead of letting rotten talk come out because you've let so much rotten stuff come in, he says build. Like only say things that are going to build. This could also be translated as edify, or make taste good, right? To like a good meal. What if every conversation that you had left the other person going, that was one of the best tasting conversations I've had? Because I've had some conversations where people didn't have very good taste, but that person's a Christian. Like, what if Christians were known for this? Like, what if you were known for your grace and your compassion and your kindness? What if followers of Jesus served the best words that were out there? Like, what if that's who we were? What if that's how we functioned in every conversation, Every conversation was building up and edifying and good. What if that was what Jesus imagined when he said, "You are the salt of the earth"? But what happens if the salt loses its saltiness? It's no longer good for anything. But that's not who we're going to be. And so I have a challenge for all of us today. We're going to call it a salt challenge, okay? And so here's what I want to do. I want to give you an opportunity to be incredibly intentional with your words this week. That requires some thought ahead of time, some prayer ahead of time. And I want you to deliver words that come across like salt in some form, in some fashion. So here's what we've done. All around the room, there are 4 different tables. There's a table right here. There's a table right here. There's one by the door back here, and there's one right back over here. And there's envelopes on these tables. And labeled on the envelope says adult. On another set of envelopes, it says teen. And then on another set of envelopes, it says kid. And so what we want to do from, old enough to speak and write to the oldest person in this room, we want to be salt with our words. And we want to help you. We want to challenge you. And so what you're going to do when we sing this song, if you want to accept my challenge, is you're going to come to one of these tables and you're going to grab a card, and inside the card is a word challenge. We're going to challenge you to use your words in some specific way to be salt this week. Not the following week, not 3 months from now. No, this week. Because what's at stake is your heart. What's at stake is the witness of Jesus in our community. And so you might find a challenge that is something like this. Think of someone who has impacted your life. Write a note to them and send it to them this week. You might find something in there like, think of somebody who serves you every day, whether it's at school or work or whatever, and would you just intentionally tell them how you appreciate them this week? I mean, stuff like that. I'm not going to lie, some of them are hard. Share part of your Jesus story with someone this week. I don't know if I want to do that. We have to. And not just because it's what Jesus envisions for us. He wants us to be salt with our words. And if we served good words always to everyone, amazing things could happen. But I just want you to think about, what could that do for you? What could that do in you if you were the kind of person that changed your thinking and went to work on your thought life so that you could have a healthy word life? What if you believed that all of your words will contribute in some way to make Jesus known? What if you prayed your thoughts and you confessed the not so good ones? And what if you just were the kind of person that marinated on Christ and his words, and you were the kind of person that used your words to salt the earth, to salt your relationships, to salt the people that you come into contact with? What could God do if you were salt and light? And so I really want you to prayerfully consider grabbing one of these cards during this next song. And if you grab a card, you're committing, okay? There's no, I don't want to do that one, No. I'm just going to pray that that's the one you need to do. And you may not understand it, and it may not make sense for years, I don't know. But I just want you to be the kind of person that intentionally goes, I'm going to be the kind of person with my words that salts the earth. Whatever this card says, if I have a problem with it, it's probably because there's something in my thinking that needs to get adjusted this week, right? So, hey, let me pray for you. God, let me just pray this morning, just over this room. God, when we listen to scriptures about who we're supposed to be, salt, and light. And then when we hear how there's times where we don't function right, we don't want it to be that way. God, I pray that we would be the kinds of people that understand that you created us in word or in deed to give glory to you. And we just surrender our thoughts to you. Every negative thought we give to you, every corrupt thought we give to you, every self-righteous thought we give to you. And God, we ask that you would make our thoughts and our hearts like yours generous and good and loving. And so as we grab a challenge today, help us to be faithful to do it and do something in us and for others because of it. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Hey, would you stand?